Welcome back to the Authentic Society. I'm Jayme.
I'm Maddie.
And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about fighting with your spouse.
And how we handle like conflict resolution.
Yes. So this can go really for any close relationship in your life
significant
too.
other, anything.
Yeah. You know.
I feel like your significant other fights are a little bit different than any other fight, but
True. They hit deep because that's the person closest to you.
it's the person you want to be like working with the most.
Well, and you don't ever want to feel disconnected from somebody that's usually the closest person in your life to me. I always feel like if me and my husband aren't on a good page, then the rest of my life isn't on a good page.
Yeah. If we're fighting, it's awkward everywhere.
Yeah.
Plus, it's the person you spend probably the most amount of time with.
Yeah, for sure.
Besides your
So
children.
we're going to get into that today. Fighting with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife.
Everyone.
Significant
others.
Yeah, significant others.
So first off, we want to start with like our relationships are not perfect.
No, because everyone thinks I like to brag about my life on here.
What?
Yeah, there was a comment that's like, Jayme likes to brag about her life and then complain about all the things she doesn't have. And
Is
I
it
was like,
true?
You tell me.
Is it true?
That I brag about my life?
Yeah.
Do you think I brag about my life?
No.
I don't think so.
No, don't worry. I wouldn't worry about it.
I'm not. I'm not. But I thought it was funny.
But it's not like perfect, and no relationship is perfect.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
We argue like everybody else.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
I think me and Dylan bicker more than I like to admit and
Really?
argue. Mm-hmm.
I think everybody does. When Isabel lived with me, she went and told Christine like how we fight. And Christine was like, yeah, you would. She said that Caleb would say something and you'd stop talking to him. And she's like, and you guys like would sit in the same room together because you wanted to be by each other, but you would just like not talk to each other. And you'd just be like,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, probably.
Well,
I feel like we've grown a little bit since then.
Well,
but-
that's living together. It's like when you are in a marriage and you're living together with somebody, you fight with them and it's like, well, I'm at home and neither of us we're going to leave. So we're going to sit here and be mad at each other. But
we're going to turn the TV volume up.
Yeah. And just ignore each other for a couple hours.
And then we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the biggest reason that you and Dylan fight?
Dumb stuff.
Really?
Yeah. None of our fights are ever that deep. I think for me, I think the thing that I get on him most about is his sarcasm.
Oh, really?
Yes, because sometimes and this is so awkward because he's sitting in the room with us, but his sarcasm is so unwarranted sometimes. And sometimes I'm just not in the mood. And he likes to tease and pick. And sometimes I'm like, you don't know when to stop. And it'll cause a fight. And because it's like, you don't know when to stop until I'm upset. And
what do you think he fights with you about the most?
My procrastination on things. He can't stand it. I am such a procrastinator. I don't feel like I'm living to my fullest unless I'm on a deadline.
The 3 a.m. fires is a real thing.
Yeah. Like, I mean, when it comes to my car, when it comes to, I will drive home with 5 miles to eat.
Okay. I feel like that might be a common thing.
What do you and Caleb fight about the most?
We fight about really stupid stuff too. Our biggest fights are usually because Caleb, we're very frugal. We save our money and I'll spend money here or there at Starbucks. It's like Starbucks is ridiculous. It's like $9. But Caleb's impulse buys are like $400 of hunting stuff. And it doesn't happen all the time, but it's like, oh my gosh. And we usually argue about that kind of stuff.
So money.
Yeah.
That's a common thing for people.
Yeah.
Money is a big thing. Yeah.
And we do our budgeting together. And so sometimes like we'll kind of bicker about like, why would you spend like, Caleb, like what did you buy here at Amazon for whatever? And I'm like, I don't even remember. I don't remember.
If you ever want to have a bad day, go through how much you've spent on Amazon in the last year.
Really?
It'll make you. One time, me and my best friend from high school, because, you know, we don't see each other very often. So when we get on phone calls, we talk for a very long time. And one time we sat there and went through our Amazon purchases and how much we spent in the last year. And it is so humbling. And it's like, oh, no wonder I always say I don't have any money. It's
gone.
It's because I've spent $6,000 in Amazon purchases in the last year. That's how much it adds up. The $7 here, the $9 here, the $20 here, the Prime membership, it adds up.
That's what we used to fight about the most. And then we actually did Dave Ramsey's program, the debt snowball. We got out of debt with that. And so now we're really conscious with our budget. And so someone told me the other day that they have a stupid line on their budget. And I was like, that's a really good idea. Like something that they just spent that was so stupid. And I'm like, maybe we should do that. But
yeah, well,
I feel like that would be like, but it's usually really dumb. Like it's not like a full blown out. I've never had like a screaming match with Caleb.
Ever in your entire marriage?
We did once.
What was that about?
When he was trying to get into the elevator union, a friend of his set him up because a friend of his knew a guy that like a friend of his was also really good friends with one of the guys, the managers on that was going to be interviewing. And this is not abnormal. This is done all the time in the union. And so this friend introduced Caleb to this manager, and the manager was so rude to Caleb. And I thought Caleb was being mean to this manager. And so we came home and I was like, what were you doing? And we fought, like, because Caleb was trying to explain it to me and I wasn't listening. I wasn't being patient with him. And I was like, I don't care. Like, this is like our future. This is like you just jeopardize this. And later on, this friend of Caleb's told me that, yeah, the manager was an asshole and it was 100% on him. And it ended up being a blessing because that was in Nevada and we would have stayed there had Caleb done well with this guy. And we ended up getting a really good job and a really good life out here. But I was so mad.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh my gosh. All our screaming matches are so stupid. Like,
really?
One time it was about the damn air.
Oh.
And what you set the air on. It's so dumb. And we literally fought and screamed at each other over 2 degrees of air. And it's because I like to freeze.
Yeah.
And Dylan's like, our electric bill is $300. You need to learn that we don't need to have the house on 68 all the time. And I'm like, I work for a living. I work 40 hours a week. And if I want to turn my house down to 68
in the summertime, for those of you who don't live here in the summertime, that is like your pipes are going to freeze.
I love it though. And he was like, Jayme, there's just no need. Like, and I get it because I would turn it down to 68 and then I'd be on the couch with like a full on comforter. And that's my happy place. But I'm like, I grew up and got to where I am in life that if I want the damn air down, that's what it's going to be. So we compromised. And that's usually always the hardest part of marriage is compromising on something you don't want to compromise on. And, I'm not allowed to crank it down that low anymore. But
clearly you're okay with that.
I'm clearly not, but it is compromise and we crank it. Our problem is we forget to crank it up when we get up in the morning. So that's where the most money comes. And so, if you crank it down at night, you got to remember, like, let me bump it up.
Can't you schedule like
we ain't that fancy.
I don't know. We aren't either. But like, I know that you can get like attachments to your AC unit, like a wall thing. They're like $35. I don't know. I've been told this. I've only never looked into it, but apparently you can get it and they'll schedule it.
We fought about the air for 2 days.
Wow.
No joke.
So how did that end up like resolving? You compromised?
Yeah. Well, I said that we don't need to have it up on 74, 75. Like I should be able to crank it down to at least 70, 71.
Okay.
And so that was basically the compromise. But we always, when we scream and fight at each other, it's always over dumb stuff like that is so easily being able to compromise on. It's just, I'm very stubborn and I don't like to give in a lot. And because I don't feel like I should have to. Dylan's laughing at me. But marriage is one of the things that taught me that you do have to compromise and compromise. And you don't always, and I say this all the time, you don't always have to be right. And I learned that really, it kind of slapped me in the face that I realized that if I'm always right, then he's always losing. And in a good, healthy marriage to me, that nobody's right and nobody's wrong. And that when you compromise, you both win. Yeah. And that if I always want him to be wrong, then I always want him to fail. And why do I want that? Because when Dylan wins, when your husband wins or your wife wins, then you win. Yeah. Because you're on a team. And for me, it's like I've had to learn that I don't necessarily care to be right all the time. There's always things that I could have done better in an argument. There's always things that I could have done better in my marriage. And if I'm not taking and self-reflecting on how to be a better wife or a better person to the person I love the most, then what's the point of all this? And so compromise has been a really challenging thing for me to learn because I used to be the mindset, I'm right, you're wrong. And really, when you love somebody, that's a terrible mindset to have.
I saw this reel the other day and it was some motivational guru and he's like, compromise is garbage. Compromise is the other person winning. And I was like, wow, they must have such a healthy relationship because that is absolute trash. Because your whole life, whether it's in a marriage, but also in work relationships, in friendships, is probably about compromise.
Mm-hmm. What is something that you've had to learn to compromise on?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm a little bit dumb when I'm pregnant, but I will remember and I will tell you.
Okay. Do you think that Caleb is more willing to compromise in situations or you?
So for the first little bit of our marriage, I would not venture to say, I would say that I was a lot more selfish than Caleb is. I like when we would get in arguments, I wouldn't apologize because I knew Caleb would come and apologize. Because Caleb doesn't want to fight with me and I don't want to fight with him either, but he is almost always the bigger person and he is very quick to apologize and he is quick to forgive. And so I had to really learn like that's not fair to him. And he said that to me one time. He's like, I feel like I'm always the one apologizing. And I was like, yeah, you are. Like, I don't even have a rebuttal for that. So that was something that I had to learn. And there's like stuff he'll say. He'll be like, well, I want to go hunting this weekend. And I used to like, oh my gosh, and now I'm just like, okay, like, I used to try and control every situation. But
yeah. Are you like a retired control freak?
I'm a retired or recovering perfectionist.
You are such a perfectionist.
It's like and I used to be a lot worse until I had kids. People that I know now in my life, they're like, you're a little bit of a perfectionist, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, it used to be worse. Like that. And that was something that I really had to learn as well. But
right.
Caleb was very patient with me. Christmas is a big compromise in our house. This year we went more like clean, I guess, because we have a lot of people in our house. But traditionally, Caleb and I go all out, and Caleb really likes to go all out. But he likes like traditional, like 1980s, so maybe not super traditional, 1980s Christmases. He likes the colors and the colorful lights and the loud ornaments and the loud decorations. And I'm just like, But he loves it and the kids love it. So that is a big, but I'm like noise on my counter or like mess on my counter, noise in my head. So that was something I had to compromise on.
That's a good one. Mess on my counter, noise in my head.
Yeah.
That describes me perfectly because I love a clean counter.
I love a clean house. Dishes in my sink.
Well, I think when you have spent a lot of time in your kitchen, a clean counter is so important because it just sets the tone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay. So what are your rules for like when you're fighting? What are like hard no's that you don't do?
Well, I know you don't call each other names, but I am so quick to say you're being an ass right now. So that's something I need to work on. But hard no's.
Do you think it escalates the fight when you call each other? I don't think that saying...
He doesn't call me names.
Wow, Dylan.
He doesn't. Look at him. He's so proud. He's like, it's her, guys. You're going to see that it's all her in this marriage.
Do you think that it escalates emotions when you call each other names or swear at each other? So that was one of the reasons that we decided not to, because if we're already fighting and Caleb goes, "You're being a bitch," escalates emotions.
Yeah, Dylan's never called me a bitch. I think he knows better. Because I would be like, "Oh, you think I'm a bitch now?"
You're taking it from like a 5 fight to a 10 fight.
I'm about to show you what a bitch looks like.
Yeah.
And so I think he knows.
0 to 60 real quick.
But I will tell him all the time, like, "You're being an ass right now." And I'm sure that he does not enjoy being called an ass. But yeah, I definitely think it takes it to another level when you start cussing and swearing and calling each other names, because at that point you're just wanting to hit low, and at that point you're just, let me show you how angry I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you said that that's like a hard no for you guys, is that you don't call each other names, I think that's a very good one. I need to work on that. Dylan never calls me names, so it's very unfair. I'm sure I'm gonna get so many comments. It's like, Who cares? Be nice to your husband. I am.
What is like something that you guys don't do? Like, absolutely not.
Use the word divorce.
Yeah.
I would hope that would be a common thing.
I don't think it is. I mean, yes and no.
Yeah. That is not on the table for our fights. I used to sometimes use it. And now Dylan's like, can't be the first thing that you threaten, because it's a threat, substantially. And I don't think you should threaten your spouse. I think if you're going to leave, you need to leave. I don't think there needs to be threats and hoping somebody changes and stuff like that. And I think when you pull the divorce card, it's an easy card to pull. And it's hurtful. It's hurtful, and you're using it to hurt that person. Dylan has never used the word divorce to me, and I have had to work on that doesn't need to be in my vocabulary ever. It never needs to be, and I've gotten a lot better at that. I can't remember. I mean, that was like our first year of marriage kind of stuff. I haven't used the D word in so long, because none of those fights made me want to, I would never really get a divorce, so why am I using that word?
Yeah. Like, if you're really not at that level, and almost always you're not, you just throw it out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like when people say I'm done with you, or we need to break up, or we need to get a divorce, or we need to take time split. I do think that is, people use that as a threat to scare the other person into acting the way they want, or to hurt them. And that necessarily isn't healthy.
Yeah.
What about you? What are your hard no's?
Just real quick, a thought on that. I also think that when people are actually done in a marriage, they're not screaming at each other, and they're not like throwing out the divorce. Like, when they're truly done in a marriage, it's usually very calm, unless there's like toxicity and there's a cycle of abuse going on. I feel like when people throw out the divorce word in a fight, it's usually in the heat of a screaming match or a very heated argument. It's like, if you're in a heated argument, obviously you care enough to try and fix this, because you're in a heated argument, you care. So I think that is also where it can get really scary when you throw out divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Our biggest is we don't call each other names.
No,
the divorce word too. Like that's not an option for us. So
right. And I think also my biggest thing that I've had to learn in getting into fights is that it is okay to take time to cool off.
It's also okay to fight.
Yeah, it's okay to take time and cool off and separate. You don't have to fix it right then. And I always think better, or we always come to a resolution, Dylan and I, better when we've had time to walk away from an argument, sit, chill, think about it. And the saying of, never go to bed angry, we don't follow those rules.
No, I don't either.
Because a lot of the times when you're in a marriage, you fight at night because you work all day or you have kids all day and the kids go to bed or you're done. And then if you've gotten in a fight about something, you fight right before bed, which is not necessarily great either. But instead of staying up all night to try to fix something that probably is not going to be
you're tired,
fixable.
Yeah.
Go to bed. You go to bed in the same bed together.
Yeah.
You go, good night, love you. You're mad. And then in the morning, you're never that angry.
No.
You're usually over it.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, don't ever go to bed angry, that has never been the case for Dylan and I. And I've had to learn that. I'm like, I'm not sitting up till 2 a.m. trying to work out a fight. It's going to make me more angry because we're not going to compromise right now. And you go to bed, you wake up in the morning, you can think clearer, you talk a lot softer, and usually that fight has diffused. And
you honestly don't care. There's that saying going around on Instagram, and it's like, if you hate yourself, go to bed. Or shower. If you take a shower, if you think the world hates you, go to bed. And it goes through all these things like take a walk, take a shower, go to bed, and all these things. And I think about that all the time when people talk about like how they don't go to bed before like a fight is resolved. And I'm like, dude, I am like irrational past 9 p.m. Like my bedtime is 9:30 and I am irrational. And if you're trying to pick a fight with me at like 8:30, I'm like, I'm just going to go to bed.
Yeah. Well, and I've also had to learn with fighting is that I can't expect him to always say the thing I want him to say in my head to resolve the issue.
You can't read your mind.
Yeah. Well, I think when you go into a fight, a lot of times people have expectations of like, this is how he should apologize, or this is how she should say she's sorry. And this is, what I want her to say. And I need him to tell me how much he loves me and that blah, 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 blah. And then the expectation of how that fight is going to end and it doesn't makes it worse.
Yeah.
So you keep fighting because you keep hoping that they're going to say the thing that you need them to say. And they never do. And it's never good enough. And sometimes you're just like, this isn't even worth fighting over.
Yeah.
And you like you said, you got to tell them. They can't read your mind.
I always tell people for everything. This is like one of my favorite sayings for the last 4 years. Since 2020 is like, we don't live in a Hallmark movie. Unfortunately. So people aren't written to like have the happy ending, or the guy's going to say the perfect thing because it was written by a woman or a gay man.
I know. That's been hard for me. I'm such a book girly. I've always loved a good romance, and life's not a romance novel.
Was there stuff that you thought about that like you saw your parents fighting and then you were like, hey, this is probably not a good idea?
Oh my God. So many things.
Really?
Yes. I saw my parents fight a lot about bills and money, which I think so many people do.
It's a really common,
right?
It's a very common indicative of divorce too.
Yes. Well, I think the three most common things people fight about are like, how do you raise your kids, money, finances, and then like politics and religion.
Oh, really? I think it was in a marriage. Well, I hope that in a marriage, people have similar ideologies. It's hard.
My parents didn't.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard for them.
Yeah. Well, obviously.
Especially
they're not
in today's
married.
world where it's so in everything. I don't know. I think some people can make it work.
Yeah. So money,
Money.
Me and Dylan don't fight about money because, this might change when we have children, but right now we don't. So it's like we both help out. We both have jobs. I trust him with money and he trusts me with money. And so, if I want to go and spend money on a $100 dress, then I'm allowed to. And same if he wants to go buy a new gun for hunting, he's allowed to. Is there obviously a threshold of money that we have to talk about before we spend it? Yes, I think there should be in a marriage. Like, I think you should have like a cap of like, we're not going to spend this much money without talking to our significant other.
And frivolously.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, but we don't fight about money because I think I saw it so much growing up that, and maybe that's like kind of like on the kid thing is like, I know kids take up a lot of money. And right now I really love that we're in a spot that we don't have to sit there and argue about it.
So, one of the things that like Caleb and I talk about with money is more so, because we have bills and stuff like that. And also my retirement and his retirement and the kids' investments and stuff like that. So it's like when we have a surplus, it's like, where do we want to allocate it? Because I hate debt. And so that's, I think, usually it's a disagreement of allocating.
What did your parents fight about growing up that you saw that you're like, I'm not going to do this?
A lot.
Name one.
I think that my parents never, there was a lot of like cleaning the house. Cleaning the house was a big thing.
Oh my God. My parents fought about that too. That's a good one.
Yeah. My parents fought about that a lot. My dad would come home because he worked during the week and he was always just riding my mom about a clean house.
So was mine.
Yeah.
So was mine. My dad literally would come home and turn into a rage because like there was dishes in the sink and there was stuff everywhere. But also at the same time, my mom's like, I work as many hours a week as you do. You are more than capable to clean this home. Yeah. Like I am. Yeah. And your mom worked full time.
My mom worked full time and she was in school a lot of my childhood.
Yeah.
She was in school for a while. She went to school when it was just before Gabe was born. So it's like 6.
So that's a good one. Cleaning the house. Yeah. And this is the thing with Dylan and I, we both clean.
Yes. And that was something. So Caleb and I didn't fight about that because Caleb, we both lived by ourselves, but I also grew up cleaning and he grew up cleaning. His mother was very like, just because you don't have money because they grew up very poor, doesn't mean you have to have a dirty house. So she would clean and make them clean and she taught them how to clean. So that's never been a problem for Caleb and I. It was something my parents fought about a lot though.
Neither of my parents cleaned.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in a very messy house. And so
do you think they were just tired?
I'm sure they were tired. I'm sure my dad expected my mom to do more of the cleaning because of gender roles that we put on women. And, for me, I've always looked at Dylan and said, we both work the same amount of hours in a week. And so we both have to pitch in because this is your home just as much as mine. And, I deserve a clean home. You deserve a clean home, but we have to do it together. I mean, it'd be different if I was just staying home. Yeah. And
you were a kept wife.
If I was a kept wife and had no kids or stuff, but that's not the case. And so it's like, we're both capable of doing laundry. We both do the dishes. Mm-hmm. We both vacuum. There's some stuff that I do that he doesn't do. Like I'm usually the one that scrubs the toilets, but he's usually the one that takes the trash off. Fair. So to me, it's like, it should be even, yeah. I think.
I think I think we're seeing more of that in today's society. I know a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, my husband cleans the house too. And when you're a stay-at-home mom too, you're going to clean that house and the kids are going to make it a mess too. And if your husband is not understanding of that, you all need to have a conversation.
Yeah. That's a good one though. I didn't even think about that. Brought back a lot of memories.
My parents didn't fight a ton. Like, they didn't resolve it. And like, my mom kind of just would just let my dad go.
Do you guys fight in front of your kids?
Yes. I think it's important.
Really?
Not like full blown screaming at each other, but we also resolve it in front of the kids. One thing my mom said is, so her stepfather and my grandma never fought in front of them. And she said she thought something was wrong with their marriage. And when they first got married, because she didn't know how to resolve it. She had never seen it married or mirrored. So we argue in front of the kids, but we'll also resolve it in front of the kids. And I mean, like, Caleb and I don't, it's not like we always argue, B, and when we do, it's usually like
silly stuff,
stupid, silly stuff. And it's not even like half the time I'm laughing because I'm like, no, it is this way. And he's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. You know, those kind of arguments. But if like it's a serious argument, I'll usually just say like, so the other day, Caleb's trying to quit tobacco. And if you've ever had a husband try and quit tobacco, usually they're very moody. And so I had to tell him the other day, I'm like, I don't know what your deal is. Like, I don't know why you're so emotional and moody and like almost mean, but we got to figure it out. And he was like, I'm trying to quit tobacco. And I was like, okay, that's good to know now, but you can't like start yelling over nothing. And my kids were there watching this. And he was like, I'm sorry. Like, okay. And I was like, no, I'm sorry that I had to say something, like, but you can't continue doing this. And he was like, okay. And he looked at the kids and he's like, I'm sorry, I'm being short-tempered. And I think that is so important for kids to see.
Kids deserve apologies too.
That was like something that was so revolutionary in my thought process when I was raising kids. It was like apologizing to your kids. When I read this book, I'm not even gonna tell you the book. It made me so mad. But there was 2 things that I took out of the book. He said, you need to apologize to your kids when you've sinned against them. It was a book on why you should spank your children, because we told a friend of ours that we didn't spank our children. And she was like, will you read this book with me? And I was like, sure. And I was like, the whole time I was like, oh, but anyway.
He was teaching you that you should.
He was explaining why it's, have you ever heard like spare the rod, save the child?
No.
Save the rod or spare the rod.
I didn't grow up biblically like
I know. I didn't either. But like we moved to the Bible Belt and everybody we know is like Baptist. We're not Baptist. So it was like, so she was explaining. Anyway, I read the book. It made me infuriated. But there were 2 things that I took away that were actually very good, I think. And one of them was you should always apologize to your child when you have done wrong to them. And I was like, that is so good.
Why do you think that's so hard for parents to do?
I think that...
Or adults in general.
I was reading a comment actually on one of the videos and it was like, boomers raised Gen Xers and boomers were really harsh. And I don't know every boomer, but I know a lot of boomers, it was hard for them. A lot of them were raised by parents who had shell shock or PTSD or whatever.
Poor. Very poor.
And then she said, so a lot of Gen Xers were angry. And they were also trying to figure out who they were. And it was kind of like, well, that's how I grew up. Nothing wrong with it. I also think that with the rampant rise of the internet and social media, we know a lot more.
But I think it's important, even adults, to apologize. I mean, I remember when I was a teacher that I would always apologize if I had, oops, my bad, sorry guys, or I'm sorry. Like, it's important for people.
It mirrors a good thing for them. My kids say sorry all the time. Like, oh, I'm sorry, Mom. And it's like not even prompted, but they've seen it mirrored to them.
Yeah. I used to think saying I'm sorry, especially in my relationship, was like venom, and that it would kill me if I said I'm sorry. And it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And I think because it wasn't taught to me. Like, I didn't see a lot of apologies going on in my house. And so when I grew up, it was like, I don't know how to say I'm sorry. That means I'm wrong, and I'm not wrong. My feelings are valid. And just because you say you're sorry doesn't mean your feelings aren't valid or you're not right. It just means that you care enough about the other person to say, I'm sorry, I value your feelings too, and I might have not done everything right. And it never hurts to apologize.
Yeah. And I think we're moving more into a world that is, I don't know. I think it's the same. I see a lot of people not apologize. I'm like,
yeah, but from somebody that had a really hard time learning and recognizing how to apologize to people, that never should be with my husband. I should never like feel like he gets a one up on me if I've apologized.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, it's gonna
be a hard marriage if that is the case.
Yeah. And it's not that case. Like usually 9 times out of 10, when I say I'm sorry to Dylan, he's like, thank you. I really appreciate that apology. It meant a lot.
Yeah.
And that always feels good to know that like I resolved and said I'm sorry and apologized for my wrongdoings.
Yeah.
And I do think it's interesting though, fighting in front of your kids, because somebody that had their parents fight in front of them all the time and never resolved it. The opposite is Dylan's parents never fought in front of him. And so communication has been something also that we really have had to learn, because his parents were very old school and they never fought in front of each other, really. And so I think that can be good, but it also, like you said, it doesn't help the conflict
Kids need
resolution.
To see mirrored conflict resolution. They need to see that relationships take work and you're both willing to work on it.
And you're both willing to say I'm sorry or just talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you should be screaming and yelling in front of your kids.
No. And that's but like I said, Caleb, we never let it get that far.
Yeah.
And we're not also, neither one of us are those kind of people.
What's like the funniest thing you've done in an argument?
I don't know. What's the funniest thing you've done?
I'm trying to think.
You probably had a booger or something, and I was like, "You've got a booger." Because if there's something on somebody's face, I can't not look at it.
I probably like hid something before.
Oh, like something like vengeful.
Yeah.
I've
probably like hidden something before. I feel like that's something I would do. So he would have to ask for help to look for it.
Really?
And be like, I'm spiteful.
So it's interesting.
Or like when we get in an argument and like there was one time like he stubbed his toe right after. I was like, that's karma. I'm like,
he's shaking his head at you.
I'm just spiteful person.
That's funny. I don't think I've ever done so. Usually if like we're fighting and I'm like, I used to just like, well, I'll just do it myself. And like I would just, I'll just do it myself and I'll show him that I don't need him. And then I was in therapy and the therapist was like, that's actually mirrored from your mother probably. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, that's not a healthy relationship. Do you want that kind of a relationship where you have to do everything by yourself? And I was like, no. And she was like, it's probably okay to.
I've done that too, though, where I'm like, I can do it.
I can do it by myself. I don't need help. I don't need a man.
Need it.
I'll show him I don't need it. But it's like that's not helpful either, especially when you like promise to spend your life with somebody and somebody you love who wants to help you.
Yeah. And like at the end of the day, as much as I'm like, I don't need a man, necessarily no, but I want man.
I always tell people I'm very independent, but I have become extremely codependent.
Oh my gosh. I know, because this is sick. And like, I hate saying it because it's so corny, but you know how people are like, I'm not a daddy's girl, I'm a husband's girl. That is me through and through.
Uh-huh.
I was never a daddy's girl. I am a husband girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, yesterday I was like, I really need my oil changed.
I agree with you. I'm like a husband girl too. And it's also been like healing to me to watch Caleb with our kids. And that makes you love your husband so much more too.
Really?
Yeah. Watching your husband be a healthy dad makes you like, wow, you just are like, and the like Caleb's ability to say, I'm sorry. Like the other day where he was like, I'm sorry, kids, you know, that wasn't fair of me either. Caleb is quick to say sorry.
So when it comes to fighting and forgiving and moving on, I think for marriages specifically, it's like we're supposed to forgive and forget all the time. How do you struggle with like forgiving and moving on, or do you kind of like hold a grudge and sometimes your old fights come back into new fights?
It depends on behavior. So if it's something that is like when you're newlyweds, there's obviously going to be stuff that comes up a lot because you're figuring each other out. You've spent a lifetime without each other. So I think that there's that, but I also think for Caleb and I, we have moved past it. There was a lot of stuff that came up when we were newlyweds repeatedly, but there's also stuff that's like what we were talking about the other day, tics, like boundaries and tics. Like there's some stuff that he does that used to bother me so much, and now I'm just like, it's just part of him. It's just who he is. Like, I don't care. Caleb's going to quit chewing once a year, and he's going to be ornery once a year, and then he'll probably start chewing again. He's actually doing really good this time. But it's like, there is stuff that comes up, but often if we're both working towards, which hopefully if you're in a good marriage, you're both working towards things. And I'm not talking tics. I'm talking real things that are hard. Then you are working towards it together.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I also think you should forgive, like you want forgiveness in your marriage. And, you know, nothing is worse because I've been in the relationships where they just never forgive you, or they always hold on to a grudge, or they keep reminding you of that one time you did that something. And I don't want to do that for my marriage. I want to forgive, like I want to be forgiven. And this doesn't come with every relationship because some things are unforgivable. But for marriage, it's like, I need to let go that he didn't put his socks in the hamper. I need to let go that he didn't pick up his wrapper next to the couch. Like, I need to let some of that go.
Yeah.
And you pick it up for him and you throw it away.
Because he does the same for you.
Yeah.
I read this quote the other day and I shared it. I'll share it again. It says, the reality is none of us are easy to be with. We all have our struggles. And so when someone chooses to stay committed and to understanding you and actually wants you to grow and grow with you, don't allow your ego or your pride to ruin that connection.
Gosh, ego and pride can ruin so many things.
Yeah.
Well,
final thoughts. Talk about, so I would love to know what is something that like is a tip on fighting, like how to forgive each other. Like, you don't go to bed at night. We don't call each other names. We both don't use the divorce word. We also go to bed mad at each other sometimes.
Have sex.
That too.
And nothing. I mean, no, but for real, if like this is real, like girl talk and stuff like that, a lot of the times when you fight, I feel like sometimes because you're not feeling connected and close with each other, and having sex sometimes fixes that for me.
That's true.
So nothing like some good makeup sex. That's a good tip.
Yeah. I also want to stress, like, every couple fights.
Everyone.
And whether your parents like fought in front of you or didn't fight in front of you, or you see on Instagram these couples who look perfect, everybody fights.
Well, when you live with somebody, you're around them all the time. They're also your best friend. You share bills, you share finances, you're raising kids. You're going to fight. It's inevitable.
Yeah. And I am not above therapy, like marriage counseling or mediation or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that a lot of strong couples go to therapy because it's always good to have a check-in and have a third party perspective to be like, hey, this is what I'm seeing from the outside looking in.
Like maintenance work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I would love to know what you fight about with your spouse. Like, I want to know a dumb fight or like a reoccurring fight. And then also like your
tip, best tip.
Your best tip.
For like when you make up, when you're not fighting, like, okay, here's how to not take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Sometimes it needs to go there, but
sometimes the gloves are off. All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.